Hey y'all, this is Mrs. McGrain, and I'm coming to you from lovely sunny North Libery, Iowa today. I'm super excited to be able to be with you, and we are going to be doing notes today. Today, we are going to be continuing our work with natural resources. That's what this little mini section lesson this week is going to be about. And we are going to be talking about one of our first essential natural resources that we're going to learn about, and that is soil. So in order to do that, I need you to go ahead and get yourself a piece of paper. And so the piece of paper that I want you to get is going to be like this. I want you to get a lined piece of paper for me, if you could, please. So pause this until you are ready to move on. You are going to need one lined piece of paper. If you don't have a lined piece of paper, just get any kind of piece of paper, that's fine, and you can go ahead and take notes on it. I know that typically we give you your own paper to go ahead and take notes on, but the coronavirus, our quarantine, has given us a good opportunity to learn how to kind of push ourselves into take notes on our own. So pause this. Once you get yourself a piece of paper, then you can go ahead and start up again on this video and be ready to go with me on taking notes. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my color that I want to work with today. And on my piece of paper, as you are taking notes, and you are going to learn this the more you get to higher education, it's always very important to label your notes. And so this today is going to be soil notes. I'm giving myself this at the top of my margin because down here, I'm going to go ahead and put my essential question. I really want to make sure that I'm giving myself as much space as possible on my note sheet. In addition to giving your notes a title, a heading, you always should go ahead and put the date. I am just going to write the word date over here, but this is where you would want to go ahead and put your date. Always date all of your notes. It's super important to go ahead and do that so that you can go back and you can stay organized. Organization is key, very, very important. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our essential question. So our essential question is going to be, why is soil needed as a natural resource? Okay. So that is something that we're going to be thinking about as we are going through these notes. Keep that in your head. Why is soil needed as a natural resource? What is soil providing to us? Why is it an essential natural resource? Okay, so these are the things that we are going to be walking through. In order to get started, let's go ahead and talk about what is a natural resource. So let's go ahead and define natural resource as the first thing that we're going to go ahead and write down. So natural resource. Hopefully by now you watched the video that we went ahead and put out there for you on Edpuzzle on natural resources. And so this is going to be something that will be review for you. But natural resources would be objects that the earth provides for human survival. Okay, these are the objects that Earth provides for human survival. Without these, we would not be able to survive. So this really becomes more of our needs rather than our wants. That's a really good way to think about it. Natural resources would be our needs, not the things we want to help us be more comfortable on Earth, but these are the natural resources that we need for survival. And so when we continue to move on through the weeks, you're going to be learning then about why it's very important for us to protect, conserve, and then how we can go ahead, what can be our part as far as making sure that these natural resources, these objects that the earth provides us for human survival, we keep on this planet and we don't waste for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. All right, so we're going to go ahead and talk about soil. Um, I think we can go ahead and start the movie. So I'm going to move over here. I'm going to hit the play button.
Soil is made of rocks, decayed plants and animals, air, and water. Let's first look at rocks. Through a process called weathering, big rocks break down into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually becoming part of soil. Soil does not form in a day. It can take hundreds of years. Wind, water, and extreme hot and cold temperatures cause rocks to break down over time. The pieces of rock are transported from one place to another through erosion. But wait, soil is not just tiny rocks. It is also made up of decayed plants and animals called humus. Humus is made from things that were once alive, like leaves that fall from a tree. The dead leaves decay or break down and become part of the soil, giving it nutrients. Humus is a dark color and is found on the ground's surface. There are 3 layers of soil. The topsoil is the top layer where plants grow, and it is only a few inches thick. Humus is part of the topsoil. The middle layer is the subsoil, and it is a combination of soil and rocks. Bedrock is the bottom layer that is made up of many layers of rock.
Okay, let's go ahead and take some notes on what it is that we saw. All right, so let's go ahead and write down soil composition. Composition is a word that is used for what it is made of, okay? And there are 4 components to soil. The first one is going to be rock. Depending on what kind of rock you have is really going to give you the properties of your soil. And so when we are talking about rock or rocks, there's a process that you should be familiar with called weathering. Weathering is the breaking down of rocks into smaller rocks. So this would be broken rocks into small pieces or smaller pieces. It's very important. This will give the mineral content of your soil. Okay, so mineral content is really important. I'll go ahead and write that. This would be your mineral content. Minerals are here. Your iron, your magnesium, all of those wonderful things, phosphorus that are going to be in your soil are going to come from your rocks and that broken down matter. Now, when we're talking about weathering can happen, as you might remember, due to wind. You can have water, and then you can have extreme temperature changes. And I want you to know, for those of you that don't know me, I really struggle with writing neatly. So I am doing my very best work for you today because I know while you're at home on this quarantine, we're asking for your very best work also. So I'm trying really hard to write very neatly. So I apologize if it is not coming off that way. All right, the second thing that the video told us was we need to go ahead and look at decayed plant and animal matter. Decayed is just another word for broken down. So it's kind of like weathering, but we don't call it weathering when we're dealing with plants and animals. This is broken down plants and animals. Okay, this is what creates this wonderful thing called humus. Excuse me, I always say that. Humus. Hummus is what you eat with pita chips. This is hummus. Not hummus, it's humus. This is humus. This is where we get our nutrients from. So this is the nutrients in the humus come from the decayed plant and animal matter. So we get our minerals from the rocks and we get our nutrients from this plant and animal matter, which is called humus. All right. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and look at that we learned was you need also water in soil and you need air. It's very important that plants get air not only from the atmosphere, but also the roots. The roots also need to go ahead and take in oxygen. Otherwise, they're going to suffocate. And so sometimes you can get waterlogged soil. If it's too watery and your roots can't breathe, your plant is going to drown. Just like you can drown in water, plants can also drown in water. So we really need to have those four components be in a very particular manner for most plants to go ahead and survive. Okay, the next thing that we're going to look at, we looked at soil composition. Now we are going to say that soil has three main layers. So three main layers of soil. The very first or top layer is called the top soil. So think about that, top soil. The top soil is really, really a precious resource. And in Iowa, we are very lucky that we have such beautiful, rich, black top soil. Soil is where the humus is located. Okay, and so we're going to talk about what farmers do in order to make sure that that topsoil has nutrients and minerals in it, but then also how we protect it, because that soil can take anywhere from a few hundred years to a few thousands of years to create. But it can also degrade and be gone in a matter of years. And even if you don't take care of the topsoil and protect it, again, through wind and water, it can be eroded, meaning carried away very, very quickly. So later on in the video, and then as we move through this unit, you will learn how that we are conserving it. We want to make sure that we conserve and protect our natural resources. And so we're going to really be focusing on that last week that we're together. And topsoil is a very important part of the world. It is naturally and feeding the world. And so many people say that it's the foundation of life for Earth because of what it does in agriculture. In Iowa, we really need to be mindful of that, and we're going to learn more about that. So the second layer, the layer underneath the topsoil, is the subsoil. And just like a submarine is beneath the ocean or in the ocean under the water, subsoil is beneath the topsoil. So this has topsoil, but it also has broken rocks. Broken down rocks. Not all the way broken down, but on their way to be small enough so that mineral content within them can be used by the plants. Okay, and then the last layer is bedrock. This is the lowest layer. This is at the very bottom of a soil column, if you will. It is known as the parent material. And depending on the bedrock, that kind of solid rock that you start with, over time, it becomes weathered, it becomes smaller. Oops, not soil, I want solid there. Solid rock. As this begins to break down and then it moves its way up, it becomes part of the topsoil, the subsoil, and then those rocks will then get small enough where it will become part of the topsoil. And so it just kind of moves along, eventually just breaking down the bedrock more and more. And depending on what kind of rock that is, if it's limestone or granite or sandstone, depending on what minerals are in there, you'll get the soil color and you'll get different properties of your soil depending on what bedrock that it comes from. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pause here. We're going to go back to our movie.
How soil looks and feels tells us about its properties. Is it good for growing plants? How much air and water does it hold? To answer these questions, let's start with soil types. There are 3 types of soil: sand, silt, and clay. Soil comes from tiny pieces of weathered rock. The difference between soil types is the size of the rock particles. Sand has the largest particles. It feels rough and gritty. Sandy soil has air spaces between the grains of sand. The airspace lets water drain through sand quickly. A sandcastle washes away in the tide because sand does not hold on to a lot of water. Silt has medium-sized particles. It feels smooth when wet. Silt particles hold on to more water than sand. A bird's footprint sticks to silty soil because silt does not drain as much water. Clay has the smallest particles. It feels sticky when wet and hard when dry. The small rock particles pack tightly together, holding the most water, but there is little space for air. The water helps clay keep its shape, so it is used to make pottery. What is the best type of soil for growing plants? Sand does not hold enough water for most plants to grow. Clay holds water, but does not contain the air that plants need. The best soil for growing plants is called loam, and it is a mixture of sand, silt, clay, and humus. Humus is made of decaying plants and animals. It adds nutrients to soil and gives it a darker color. The combination of soil and humus makes loam the best soil for growing plants because it has the perfect amount of air, water, and nutrients.
All right, let's go ahead and go back, take some notes on that. Okay, so we went to the 3 main layers, and now we're going to go ahead and talk about how we can classify soil. So this is going to be classification. And classification is going to be depending on soil properties. So let's go ahead and look at the soil properties, the properties of soil, the soil types. And so when we are looking at this, the very first one that they talked about is sand. And a lot of times we don't really think about sand as soil, but it's really, really important. And this is tiny pieces of weathered rock. That weathered and again, or broken down rock. Now, if I'm ever going too fast, always just pause and go ahead and catch up. Okay, sand is tiny pieces of weathered rock. And if you've ever been to any kind of a beach and you can look at the sand, if you're able to look at it very closely, you'll see that it's just tiny little pieces of like quartz or sandstone, any of those things that have been broken apart. So sand has the largest particles. Even though they look very tiny to us, they are the largest particles when we're dealing with classification or soil properties. They have the largest air spaces between the particles. Very good, because we need to make sure that we have lots of air for those roots of the plants, and it drains the quickest. So it drains water fastest. It does not hold on to its water very well. So if you ever need a plant that has very well-drained soil, you're going to want to make sure that it's got a big part of sand as its soil properties. So if we're thinking about this, we can see that our particles might be something like this. They're fairly spaced apart, and it allows for air, but it also allows for water to go ahead and pass right through. It does not hold on to water very well. Okay, fabulous. If we are talking about how it feels, sand would feel very gritty. If you have ever been around when there's lots of wind and you're at the beach or you're at a baseball game or softball game and that wind is blowing, it's that feeling of that grit kind of like on your teeth or on your skin. It's very gritty. It's very coarse. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is silt. And I'm going to try to fit silt in here because I want to save space. And so silt is medium-sized particles. So it doesn't have the largest particles, it has the next smallest, if you will, particles. And it has less airspace. And it holds more water. Holds more water than sand. So in looking at what silt feels like, silt feels smooth. Silt has a very smooth feel to it. Okay. The last thing, I'm going to go to the back side of my paper now. The last one that we are going to be talking about is clay. And if you have ever taken an art class, you have dealt with clay, if pottery or ceramics class. And so clay has the smallest particles. In water, the clay particles are going to be the thing that stays suspended in the water the most, because, or the longest, I should say, because it is the least massive. It's very small, lightweight, and so it is going to float farther and stay suspended in that cloudy kind of water. The last thing you're going to be seeing is clay still suspended. So smallest particles, least amount of air, least airspace, so not very good if you need roots that need to really breathe, and it holds the most water. So you got to be careful with their soil that's got high clay content, because you can go ahead and drown your roots. But a lot of clay has most of the minerals in it. And so with those minerals are really very, very tiny, so that the plants are going to be able to access those minerals that are in clay. So you have to really, again, balance it. This has a sticky feel. When we were talking about how it feels. Okay, when clay dries, it dries really hard. And so that's why for generations, for thousands of years, people have used clay to make things like pottery. So I'm going to say dries hard. Dries hard, good for your pottery, good for your ceramics. All right, now the very best soil is going to be a mixture of all three. Mixture of sand, clay, and silt. And this is called humus. No, sorry. This is called loam. So a mixture of all three, and it is called loam. Very, very good. It's got the right amount of, pore space with the sand, minerals with the clay, and the silt. Okay, so all of those things mixed together are going to be the very best for our plants. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next section.
Plants get the food and water they need to grow from soil. Plants absorb food called nutrients from their roots. Besides providing food and water, soil helps plants stand tall by holding their roots in place. When roots take hold in the ground, they keep soil from washing away. For example, tree roots prevent soil erosion by reaching deep and holding soil together. Farmers want to plant their crops in the best soil with the most nutrients. To prepare soil for planting seeds, a farmer uses a tractor to till the soil. Tilling mixes up the topsoil so the nutrients are near the surface. Crops grow in different types of soil. Rice grows in soil with clay that holds a lot of water. Pineapple grows in sandy soil. And carrots grow best in a mixture of soils. Topsoil, where plants grow, is a precious natural resource because it takes a long time for rocks to become soil. Farmers try to conserve the topsoil by rotating the kinds of crops they plant and by controlling irrigation so soil doesn't wash away. When crops are harvested, the farmer lets the plants left behind decay and become part of the soil again, giving back nutrients. Worms spend their lives eating soil. They feed on decaying plants and leaves within the soil, and this behavior helps make soil healthy. Let's look at an earthworm under a microscope. A worm does not have eyes, legs, or teeth, but it does have strong mouth muscles to swallow tiny bits of soil. Worms move forward and back, eating what's in front of them. The soil passes through the worm's digestive system and comes out the other end as waste called castings. These are worm castings, and they are rich in nutrients for plants. Worms help soil in other ways. After it rains, worms crawl deep underground, creating tunnels. Worm tunnels are important because they mix up the soil, allowing air and water to get inside to help plants grow. Since worms are so helpful, farmers raise worms just like other animals. This is a worm farm where millions of wriggling earthworms are raised and then sold to other farmers to keep their soil healthy.
Okay, let's go ahead and see what we've got there. All right, so we've learned about the different types of soil depending on what the properties are because of silt, clay, and sand. And now let's go ahead and look at how we can use them as human beings. And in order to do that, let's go ahead and take a look at plants and the soil. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a landscape here. And I am going to try to draw a cornstalk. And some tassels at the top. And then I'll even go ahead and see if I can get really creative with it. And I will make maybe some ears of corn. That's my corn. Oh my goodness, Mrs. McGrain. All right, I'm not an artist. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at what's going on beneath the soil, because beneath the soil, corn, trees, blueberry bushes, all of these things have roots. And you have your larger roots, and then you've got your smaller roots. And just like you have your own kind of like your veins in your body, and you have larger veins and they go off to smaller little capillaries, we have a root system underneath that helps really pull the nutrients in from the soil. And so the first thing that I want you to know is that the roots take in nutrients from the soil. So the soil provides the soil provides nutrients to the roots, but the roots then also help the soil. And so when we are looking at the roots help with erosion, or erosion not happening. It helps keep the soil in place. So it reduces erosion, is what I should say. So the plants in the soil help each other there. The roots help keep soil in place, reduce erosion, and the roots take in nutrients from the soil. So they kind of give each other, they help each other out there. And that is going to be very important with conservation practices also. When we are talking about farming practices, let's go ahead and look at that. When we are talking about farmers will till the soil to mix up the nutrients. Bring the nutrients to the top where they plant their seeds, and the seeds can take hold, and then the plant can grow. If we want to make sure that that soil is there for a long time, we have to have farming conservation practices. Because you can't just continue to take out of the soil and not give anything back. That soil is not going to be a continual renewable resource unless you take care of it. It is going to be gone, right? Conservation means we have to make sure that we take care of the health of the soil, and that we also take care that the soil doesn't blow away in the wind or get washed away down the rivers and streams that are in Iowa. So we have to do that, and the farmers do that, number one, by rotating their crops. Whoops, sorry. Rotating crops. I'll say crop rotation. And And the reason we do crop rotation is because some plants can take out and others can put back in. And so depending on what crops you have there, you are utilizing different nutrients from the soil so you can make the soil last longer, but also some plants will put back into the soil. And so that's really important also. So rotating your crops. The second thing would be to control irrigation. And irrigation is just a fancy word for watering the fields or how you have water on the fields. It's really important that you don't put too much water on the fields because, again, all that precious topsoil will then wash away. Or you don't want to waste water also because we are in a mega drought right now in areas like California. And so it's really important to control irrigation for our water resources, but also our soil resources. And then another thing that farmers do is after harvest, they will leave some of those plants behind so that they can decay. Oops, some. Because if you think about it, if we look at this picture up here of my pathetic little cornstalk, that cornstalk is taking all of those nutrients from the soil. And if we just, pick that cornstalk and everything and move it away, we're taking all those nutrients out. But if we allow part of those plants to rot and die, and then we till all those nutrients back into the soil, what is being taken out of the soil can then be put back into the soil when those plants are left behind to decay. And then the other conservation technique that farmers will use is they will use natural items like worms, and they will buy worms to be used as a natural way to break down the ground. They break down, the ground, and this mixes the soil and gives air tunnels. And it's important to have those air tunnels, again, because we have to remember that the plant's roots also need to go ahead and breathe. It's really important for that. Okay, we're almost done. We're going to go ahead and finish back up with our movie. We will give ourselves some last notes, and then we will be completed.
People and animals rely on soil to grow plants for food. But soil has other uses as well. This animal is a mole. Moles live underground, digging tunnels to look for worms and insects in the soil. Many animals, such as the kit fox, the burrowing owl, and the tiger salamander, live in burrows beneath the ground. Around the world, there are people who make their homes out of soil. Wet soil, made of sand and clay, is poured into rectangular molds. The mud bricks, also known as adobe bricks, are stacked on top of each other to create the walls of a building. Here are examples of buildings made of soil bricks. Clay soil can be used to make pottery. A lump of clay is molded by hand into cups, bowls, and vases. People in some cultures use the natural colors in soil to paint their faces and bodies. This allows people to express themselves and the traditions of their community. Soil is also used in medicine. A bacteria naturally found in soil is used to make antibiotics that treat infections.
All right, let's go ahead and go back. Let's go and finish up as far as the uses that we have for soil. So, uses for soil. All right, the main obvious one is going to be agriculture. Agriculture just means we use it for farming. You know, we grow our food. Right? We without it, we could not survive. Another way that we use soil around the world as a people is shelter. It's just not people, animals can use it for animal burrows. But people also use it to make bricks for human shelter. Okay. The other thing that we learned about is we can use it for dishware, dishes, pottery. Clay soil is very good because it's got super small particles. It's sticky, it holds its shape, and when it dries very hard. And so it's wonderful for dishware. Then we learned that it can also be having a decorative purpose. Oops. Okay, for art. People around the world will paint their bodies. They will make art off of different colors of soil. And then we learned about medicine. Different bacterias that grow within the soil are very good, and we've harnessed the ability to go ahead and make different kinds of medicine to make sure that we are safe. All right, so that's it for our notes. Think again about that essential question. One of the essential questions that we want you to be thinking about is, why is soil needed as a natural resource? Hopefully now you have enough information where you'd be able to answer that, and also enough information that you need to know about this very precious, essential resource in our lives that we need to survive. I want to let you know that there is another 3 to 4 minutes about a little review on everything that we learned. If you want to go ahead and see this video again, it is called All About Soil. You can watch it from the beginning on Edpuzzle, or you can go ahead and YouTube this. You can look at it on YouTube, and it's called All About Soil. So that's it. Thanks for letting me spend a half hour of my life with you. And if you have any questions, please make sure that you are emailing one of the three of us, Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Murphy, or myself, Mrs. McGrain. I hope you have a wonderful day. Talk to y'all later. Bye.